Hey guys, so this video just got so much more interesting. Oh my deities. Yesterday I was working on the first video in the Nakshatra series, this one, but I was taking a more formulaic approach and something I was going to use moving forward for each of the nakshatras because it's easier to dissect them that way, when I'm interrupted by the horrible news that Notre Dame caught fire. And immediately, with all of this nakshatra of the day info fresh in my mind, I start unpacking the event as it's happening in terms of the cosmic energies fueling it. Not only Magha Nakshatra, but also the current planetary configurations in the sky. And what I discovered was just astounding to me. And I thought, what better way to learn nakshatras than to look at a current event in our shared reality through the influences of that nakshatra, through the filter of that nakshatra, and seeing how many different associations we can pull out of the event that tie directly back to that moon mansion's characteristics. So without further ado, let's dissect the fires of Notre Dame through Magha Nakshatra in mainly pictures and voiceover so I can get it to you quick. All right, here we go. First, let's review some facts and history about Notre Dame so it's fresh in your mind as we start to get to know Magha Nakshatra. So the Basilica of Notre Dame is a medieval Roman cathedral in Paris, as you know, completed around 1260 AD. It's a Gothic architectural wonder and a long-standing symbol of Paris's power and the monarchy in general. Notre Dame was famously desecrated by revolutionaries of the French Revolution in the 1790s, during which a lot of its religious symbolism was destroyed. In 1793, it was the site of the Festival of Reason, an anti-religious festival that mocked Catholicism, encouraging people to enlighten themselves instead. Molière once ridiculed the Gothic style of Notre Dame and others like it in a poem in 1669. He said, "The insipid taste of Gothic ornamentation, these odious monstrosities of an ignorant age produced by the torrents of barbarism." The cathedral was used for many regal and high religious events in various states of repair over the years, including the crowning of King Henry VI of England in 1431. But it was probably most notably the site of Napoleon's coronation as Emperor of France in 1804. Napoleon became leader of France by a coup d'etat and convinced his hand-picked Senate to proclaim him a hereditary Emperor of the French. He apparently convinced the Pope to officiate his unorthodox coronation because he thought being anointed would legitimize him. And we'll talk more about this event and Napoleon later. The Cathedral of Notre Dame entered popular consciousness when Victor Hugo published the novel The Hunchback of Notre Dame in 1831. I just saw that it shot to the bestseller list. This led to a major restoration between 1844 and 1864, whose supervisor added the cathedral's iconic spire, the spire that burst into flames. The liberation of Paris was celebrated within Notre Dame in 1944. The liberation of Paris was a World War II battle that ended in the Germans surrendering the French capital. Paris had been occupied by Nazi Germany 4 years earlier. So that's the summary. Keep all of that in mind, and we'll refer back to it as we begin to break down the Nakshatra or Lunar Mansion of Magha. Magha, the bountiful, the fame of flame, the mighty. Now, if you don't know what a nakshatra is, check out my last video, which is a primer course for this series. But one thing I didn't make as clear as I would have liked to in the video is that A nakshatra or lunar mansion is a segment of the sky empowered by a certain star system, an asterism that falls in or around the 12 familiar signs of the zodiac. Magha is fueled by the asterism Regulus, which is one of the brightest stars in the night sky, actually. It's called the Little King. Sounds like regal. Regulus? Regulus falls in the first portion or the head of the lion. This is about 0 to 13-ish degrees Leo. So each asterism is traditionally said to have protectors that imbue the lunar mansion, representing it with certain motivations and powers. It's said that the protectors or patrons of Regulus support royal patronage and spiritual fire traditions. Keep in mind that fire traditions are often associated with either purification, creativity, or spiritual annihilation, not only destruction. Regulus is also said to support spiritual leadership through ancestral guidance to ignite the urge for us to return to the golden age, the age of the gods, or Satya Yuga. I'll do a video on the Yuga cycles at some point. It's one of my favorite topics. Regulus is the Latin name for the star, but the Greeks called it basilicas. Sounds a lot like basilica, no? A basilica is another name for a cathedral that has special privileges bestowed upon it by the Pope, i.e. the Basilica of Notre Dame. You might be like, that sounds like Basilisk, this guy from Harry Potter. This is actually similar to some depictions of a mythological creature called the Basilicus that was named the King of the Serpents, a reptilian creature with rooster qualities. Its close cousin is the creature cockatrice, which is almost identical to Abraxas, a Gnostic symbol. Jung actually writes about Abraxas, describing it as a sort of godhead operating system. Those are the words he uses. And I translate that to mean the Matrix operating system. On the cathedral's spire were a wide variety of these gargoyles. I remember being fascinated by these gargoyles when I went to Paris as a kid. My mom just sent me this picture yesterday. There we are. At the time, I remember it didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me that the sanctuary of an almighty God should need demons guarding it. Seems like it was kind of putting the wrong foot forward. What do I know? There's a French legend, actually, in which a gargoyle described as a bat-winged, fire-breathing dragon is conquered by Saint Romanus with a crucifix, and Saint Romanus brings it back to the city to be burned, but in the fire, the head and neck don't incinerate. It was believed that they stayed intact because they were tempered by their own fire. Saint Romanus decided to mount them on the walls of the church and defend against evil with evil. Also sort of like a hunting trophy. It also bears mentioning that these gargoyles are used as a drainage system, so water actually comes out of their mouth, and that I think is significant to an association of Magha I'll bring up later. Of course, in many ancient cultures and ancient mystery traditions, dragons are symbols of luck and blessings and all sorts of non-pejorative powers. Wisdom. We'll talk a little bit about the Rahu Ketu dragon of Vedic astrology in a second and refer back to this. But let's look at this guy one more time, the rooster chimera version of Basilicus or Abraxas, associated with Regulus, the stars of Magha. Kind of weird that France's national bird happens to be the rooster, the cock. In fact, there's one on the top of the spire that took the brunt of the damage the other day. This guy found it in the rubble. Abraxas, by the way, is thought to be the origin of the word abracadabra. which provides us a sequitur. Speaking of magic, let's look at the Sanskrit name Magha. The root mag, or mag, can be seen in magi, magistrate, magnus, majesty, magnificent, and the Magnificat, which was famously sung after the liberation of Paris in the Cathedral of Notre Dame. It's a hymn about the Virgin Mary. Did I mention magic? Indeed, Magha Nakshatra is the nakshatra of magicians. Let's get back to the concept of spiritual fire traditions, one of the powers that this nakshatra bestows. Now, Leo is a fire sign, but Magha is associated with water, actually. Fire and water together are the electric and magnetic, the masculine and feminine, the duality that creates life, the sperm and the womb. These dual influences make this nakshatra highly creative and empowered. And I thought it was interesting that the gargoyles, a representative of the head and neck of this creature that could withstand fire, are now used as water drainage systems. I don't know what it means, but it's a little loop back. So in Vedic scripture, Magha is ruled over by the Pitris, or the spiritual ancestors, the forefathers. So people or times under the influence of Magha Nakshatra will be under the influence of the ancestors working through us. The word Pitris is the origin of the root pat, or pa, as in patriarch, paternal, patron, or papacy. The Pope, y'all. And can't forget this one, the word Paris itself. Magha is definitely royal in nature, and it speaks to ancient lineages and history. Magha is actually symbolized by the palanquin, or the royal throne of the ancestors specifically. It's also symbolized by the eagle, which has, of course, been a long-standing icon of power for the empires of the world. Also, the eagle's associated with the sphere of Lord Vishnu's domain. Vishnu is the great preserver and sun god of Hindu mythology. In the Rig Vedas, Vishnu is said to be the one supreme deity or represent the ultimate reality. Here's an eagle on the balloon that was said to have been sent up in a blaze of lights at Napoleon's coronation. Events of pomp and ceremony like this, extravagant affairs, are very much indicated under Magha's influence, and Notre Dame has seen plenty of all that over the years. Napoleon, who had his sun conjunct Mars in Leo in his birth chart, by the way, once said, "To be a king is to inherit old ideas and genealogy. I don't want to descend from anyone." I thought it was an interesting choice of words given Magha's association with just that, old ideas, genealogy, and descendants. Paradoxically, Napoleon is a very Magha character. While Magha is decidedly about honoring the ancestors, the ascended ancestors referred to in Vedic traditions and the earthly monarchies of post-Diluvian history are hardly one and the same. There are infinite layers to unpack here. When exploring linguistics, comparative mythology, ancient records, things like that, you really have to surrender to inversions upon inversions and paradox. Anyway, despite Magha's encouragement of pomp and circumstance, the nakshatra isn't necessarily interested in earthly power. That might be a darker aspect to the nakshatra's influence. While Magha natives usually do hold high office and are affluent, Magha's ruler is all about the opposite. That ruler is Ketu, the south node of the moon. Now remember that Leo itself is ruled by the sun, which is associated with the patriarchy, the government, the personality, the ego. And the sun's influence is also on Magha then, since Magha falls within Leo. But Magha's own ruler, Ketu, helps better define its character as very distinct aspect of Leo. Ketu, the south lunar node, is described as the headless body of the dragon, calling back to the basilicus creature of the Regulus asterism and the gargoyle legend again. Ketu's influence is to separate us from the material world in some way or another. It's spiritual wisdom, the void, release, nirvana. It stores past life memories or imprints of other quantum realities. Ketu takes us out of the matrix and all of its trappings. So here in Leo, if Magha is in dignified form, it should highlight spirituality, and even in this abundant, wealthy nakshatra, would keep someone pretty detached from their own wealth, only using it to advance the ancestors' spiritual missions toward evolving human consciousness, so that we can make our ascent from the dark ages of Kali Yuga, where we're entrapped in the reincarnation cycle, back to the Edenic state of the Golden Age. So in the sky right now, Ketu is in the sign of Sagittarius, another fire sign like Leo, with the other karmic planet, Saturn, conjunct to it. This is separating us on a mass scale from long-held belief systems and religious institutions. See the Catholic Church? Not to mention the sun, again, the ruler of Leo and therefore partial ruler of Magha, just moved into the sign of Aries, where it's exalted. It's a very militant, powerful, and combustible combination, but also full of spiritual and creative fire when the sun meets up with Aries, ruled by Mars, the two fiery planets. Needless to say, this fire at Notre Dame is a very, very potent symbol for the time that we're in right now, astrologically. Now, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, but check out Crassi Atasio's video on the subject of Notre Dame's fire and ancient astrology. She beat me to the punch. Her video compares the birth chart of the Republic of France with the sky chart at the time the fire started the other day. It's crazy. The fire's chart was like a flip-flop of France's birth chart. And one of the things that flipped was the Rahu-Ketu axis. Now, Rahu is the severed head of the Rahu-Ketu dragon. See the gargoyles again. I don't know. Awful lot of dragons going on here. Just saying. So yeah, check out her video for more info. And check out my first video on the Rahu-Ketu transit in Gemini and Sagittarius, respectively, for more insight on this as well. So staying on the topic of Ketu as Magha Nakshatra's ruler, the Shakti, or the result of the power Magha gives, is said to be death. This can be understood as literal death or spiritual annihilation, which is really just an exit from the game we're in, the matrix, the 3D reality. And this is what Ketu does for us. It gives us spiritual perspective. It zooms us out. Specifically, Magha is said to bestow one with the power to leave the body at will, especially if it's prevalent in your birth chart. This can be described as astral projections, remote viewing, lucid dreaming, or other forms of out-of-body experiences. It's said that the friction created when the consciousness separates from the corporeal actually creates electricity or maybe a plasma sheath, which causes a glow effect and contributes to the brilliance of Magha natives. The fame of flame. In fact, natives of Magha are said to have the ability to master light. So guys, I don't have any grand theory on it all, just yet anyway, nor am I going to tie it up in a pretty bow. I just sort of wanted to share with you my stream of consciousness analysis. I think there's an impressive amount of intersection points between the themes of this fire and the themes of Magha Nakshatra. I mean, every rabbit hole I went down led to more and more associations. And I think there is a valuable message to be decoded in every moment of every day, and that data can be analyzed through things like astrology and also history. So when something like this happens, an event like this that has so much history behind it, it's recorded, that you can look up, it's really a huge opportunity that should be utilized, honestly, so things like this don't happen in vain. With that, I think I'll sign off today. Let me know if you have any comments, questions, or grand theories of your own. I'll let you know if I'm struck by any inspiration on the topic after this. Maybe I'll make it an update video. Until then, much love and namaste.